question to you all, because you are considered to be thought leaders in economic development, not only just in your state, but across the Southeast. How do you manage to stay on the leading cutting edge with really innovative, bright ideas and innovative programs? And people continue to look to you, and they have for many years. So you've not gotten like stale in the job. So what's your secret to staying, innovative and creative when you've been there a long time?
I came to this from a sales background, and when you kill what you eat, you learn to think creatively. I also had an advertising background, and the thoughts that I've had really, you got to be creative and figure out new ways of looking at things. I think everybody, if you look at this group right here, David, I don't know you very well, but I know the rest of the group very well, and I sort of figured that they aren't your average type of thinker. They tend to think differently and look at things differently. I know I look at things differently. So.
I mean, from my perspective, it's, I started out in architecture at Clemson, so sort of a creative, mind anyway, I guess from that sense, not an accountant per se. So never wanted to be in a cubicle. The sort of the mantra that we use in our office is from the movie The Hunt for the Red October, is a little revolution every once in a while is not a bad thing. And so that's what we try to do, is we constantly look at the organization and try to break it. Let's see if we can do it better, just reevaluate constantly.
Crystal, I was going to say, I'm a thief. I steal ideas. I'm always trying to stay on other people's websites, look at other people's programs. Chattanooga is my most recent victim. They've got a tremendous plan for innovation and entrepreneurship, and so it's been something that I've just basically, I'm not smart enough to think about new stuff, but I just stay in touch and try to do as much kind of behind the scenes, staying on top, talking to people. And if I hear something that's really cool idea, then I try to bring it home and make it fit.
Crystal, this is David. I think a couple of observations. I don't know exactly how to answer your question because it's a good one. It's at the core of us getting together, right? But I think for me, it's two big things. One, it's how I was taught by one of my mentors. I think most of us have had many mentors, but one of them is an uncle that was president of university for 22 years. And he taught me the idea of making decisions for the long term is can look very different than short-term decisions, trying to move from job to job or make more money and all of that. So when you have long-term thinking, it does change the way you make decisions and how you influence people. So that's one. And then the other, I guess, looking back over time, it's certainly not one straight line of activity and with innovation thrown in the middle. It's like I look back, I can see, I don't know, at least a half a dozen chunky big changes in my career in Charleston, where maybe it was a new strategy for the market, or, originally when I got here, it was crisis. I mean, I moved here from Savannah in 1993, right when the Navy base was closing and 22,000 jobs were going away. And of course, I had my family and friends go, "Nice career move, you idiot." You just moved to the place that's going to crater. And when you're young and naive, you say, well, there's only one way to go but up. And you have the enthusiasm and optimism, but then you get through with that crisis and it's a whole different phase. And so you look back, and for me, it's not as much the innovation at different points in time. It's these strategic structural shifts that allow you to regain energy and focus for a few years, and then you go again. So those are a couple of my thoughts.
Jennifer Lance has joined us from Wilson County, North Carolina. Jennifer, I asked the first question about how you stay on the leading edge, having been in the same position for a long time. I'll give you a second to think about it. I'm gonna call on Donnie. He's not answered that one yet. But Donnie, how do you stay on the leading edge?
I think part of that is twofold. One, leading edge of, bigger picture practices, but I think for me, it's trying to be relevant to the situation at hand for the county. Because if you look at what I did when I got here versus where we're at today, they're two different worlds. And so I spend a lot of time trying to think about how to stay relevant to the current economy, the situation we're in. I'd agree with David. I've never been able to make one decision I didn't have to live with. And so I do think if you have this long-term perspective, it makes you think harder and sharper and clearer about what you need to do. And then you have to live with the consequences if you don't leave. I think that makes you think differently and think really clearly about what you need to do. But for me, a lot of it is about relevance to solving problems and providing opportunities in the county and trying to stay relevant to where people think we should be.
Jennifer, so how have you stayed on the leading edge for so long? People look to you for your innovative ideas and you've not gotten stale. How do you manage to do that in the same position for so long?
I just do whatever Donnie does. No, I mean, honestly, I do so much development. And so it just provides a whole nother set of opportunities in our world. And it lets us look at the world and see what's going on and then figure out what kind of product we want to offer next. So we focused a lot on product over the years I've been here. And I mean, this job is so much fun. I mean, they pay us. Can you believe that? So, I mean, honestly, it's not hard to get up and come to work every day. And it's not hard to want to do things that the community gets behind and that sort of thing, because it's such a great job.
I'll jump on that one. And hey, Jennifer, how you doing?
Hey, Scott.
I think that economic development is a noble cause, a noble job. I mean, I've done plenty of bad things for the world prior to entering this career. And I feel like what I'd get to do is pay the world back to a certain degree for those things. And this is long-lasting stuff.
So I've been doing this for 25 years. So when I started, I think all of you were already doing this for a little while. And now it's 25 years later. But I don't consider you, and others don't consider you, like old or outdated or out of touch with anything. And so something that Steve and I, Yost and I've talked about, and I talk about with others, is how, when you've been around so long, do you make sure that others don't see you personally as, oh, they're getting over the hill, they're outdated, they're not with it anymore. So what are some of the personal tips and tools and tricks that you use to make sure the 20-somethings and 30-somethings you're working with don't look at you as over the hill? Because you're not. So what's some tools and tricks you use?
Yeah, Crystal, one thing we've done, and it didn't happen overnight, but it was restructure how we operate our 13-person company and professional organization. It's basically, when I arrived a long time ago, it was definitely the top down. That's just how you were taught. CEO, couple vice presidents, and then everybody just did what you asked them to do. And we, through a lot of years of cohesive teamwork and just figuring out how to resolve conflict quickly and communicate with trust and all of that, we've actually pushed it from our leadership team of president and 2 vice presidents. So that is our leadership team, but our 4 directors, director of business development, director of research, communications, and I'm losing one, as stakeholder relations. Really, those are the functional team leaders, and they are the the younger, more junior professionals, but they're actually exceptional leaders of those functional teams, and they bring together the folks that need to be on a particular project and get it done. If it's part of our leadership team or part of the marketing team or the research team. And that, to me, it's taken over time. But if I was still operating with the old model, trying to tell young professionals that are way smarter than I am and most folks in this kind of work what to do and not let them be creative and innovative, that would be bad on me. So I think that kind of transformation has been really helpful for our organization and for me professionally.
I guess one of the things, the staff that we've had here is the same staff that we've had. The shortest tenure is 3 years, but all the rest have been here going on 12, 14, 16 or more years. So one, I wonder if that is a commonality between this group, having that sort of staff support that you can, you work, you trust, that sort of thing. But I don't know if, I think that helps, being comfortable where you are and being able to, you're supported, you don't have to worry about things. So.
Real quick, I want to follow up on what Scott said. I think that's pretty important, because if I didn't have the trust in the people that have been with me for a long time to sit there and go, hey, you're an idiot, do not step on that landmine, that my longevity may not have been here. So I think Scott's got a real good point, that team that you build has been critical to keeping me here for sure.
I think all of us have personalities and charm. It's an old-fashioned word, but think of the older people you've known in your life who were very charming. I mean, when you talk to them, when you meet with them, when you visited with them, you really never notice their age either. And there isn't anybody on this Zoom that doesn't have that kind of charm that makes you someone that people enjoy working with and that sort of thing. And you take that and a long-term staff, and I'm in the same boat with Chris and Scott. I mean, my staff's been with me a long time. And I mean, you can set the world on fire.
Jennifer, did you know that Ferris is on this call? You can't see him.
It's Mark Ferris is the phone number.
A notable exception to your rule.
No. You've got charm too. But I do think having that kind of personality that works, that really works in economic development, and we've all seen examples where it didn't, really adds to your longevity. It's making good decisions, but it's also having the right kind of personality. And there isn't anyone on the call who's not a consensus builder either. You're all able to do that.
I've got a bunch of folks in my shop that are, approaching 20 years of experience, and that's a pretty relevant question. I tell you what I've done recently is I start at the budget, and I say, is there anything that you want, any program that you feel we should implement, any software that you want, any subscription service or membership to anything, and I try to reserve a portion of my budget to their response. And so communication obviously is critical. We do annual reviews and 6-month check-ins and all that stuff, but I've actually encouraged my folks to say, I think you're great, you're awesome, I don't want to lose you, but if you have an interest in getting your own shop, let me know, and I'll support you in that. And so I'm not trying to run anybody off, but I've always tried to support people from that end.
Donnie, did you want to jump in on that before I ask another question?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've tried to help people with is almost kind of a mentorship way. You can learn a lot from going to to school, from classes, from continuing education, but some stuff you can only learn experientially. There's you could read about, but you don't know how to do until you do it. So a lot of times I will give people a chance to do some things like that, or talk to them about things that I've done and ways that they might want to think about doing something. And I think I gave one person that chance in a real big way, and it worked out really well for her. But it was a big step for her to do. But now that she's taken that, she's going to be able to build off of that for a long time. And so I think some kind of experiential learning or mentorship to tell people about how things may go or different ways to do things is important.
So now I want to know how you manage not to get fired. Economic developers get fired regularly, and oftentimes it's not because they're doing a bad job. They just get sideways with their board or their elected board or their chairman or the county manager, city manager, a politician. They make the mistake of aligning themselves too closely with one group, and then another group has power. But you all have managed to avoid that. And I know that you probably trained a lot of managers and a lot of politicians. But what is your advice on kind of managing that political, and I don't mean just elected, but other types of political landscapes in your community that shift all the time, but you guys have been able to stay put when a lot of people can't. So what's your secret sauce to that?
I'll go to something that Ken Atkins gave to me when I first started here. And he basically said that you've got to have alignment between expectations and funding. And if your expectations are here and your funding is here, then you've got a problem. And if your funding is here and your expectations are here, then you've got a problem. And so matching up expectations with that funding has really always been what I've tried to use, at least from a broad perspective with the elected officials.
A good summary.
And one of the things that I have kind of adopted over the years is no surprises. Yep. No shocks. If a facility, even if it's horrible news, a facility's closing, or you did something that is going to come back to embarrass the organization, or I need to know about it. I promise. I told all my employees, I said, I promise I won't roll over on you, and it's my job to take the heat in situations like that. But I got to know. I got to be aware.
Crystal, I think another side to your question is, and maybe it's just how I'm built, and maybe the way everybody on this call is built, but not to worry about being fired. I mean, I don't really. I look back over 28 years in Charleston, 3 technical titles, although I feel like I've had 6 careers, in the same community. And I don't think I ever think about it. I'm acutely aware of the possibility, but in terms of thinking about being terminated or the negative sides of things, I just don't think that way. So what I do and maybe a lot of folks on the call do this too, is when opportunities come along, and have over the 30 years or so that my wife and I engage in the opportunity, we do the pro-con sheet and really evaluate it, pray about it, make sure if it's the right thing, we go for it, and if not, we don't. Obviously, when you stayed in a place a long time, you've evaluated things and either passed or they have passed on you. And to me, that gives a lot of confidence and comfort that you're on the right path. It's like a little test along the way. And it always, when I've either gotten cut from something or passed on it ourselves, it's re-energized me to focus on the positive aspects of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And because of those things along, you don't walk around wondering when you're going to get terminated, or if you are. So just a little different twist on it.
That's good.
You fight that temptation to kind of to play more defensively than offensively? Because as I've gotten older and you start to think about what you could lose from a benefit standpoint, things like that, I've got some golden handcuffs that are, it'd be terrible to lose them. And so occasionally it'll get in your mind, at least in my mind, to change tactics a little bit, to be more defensive. And I've had to fight that off because I'll lose my edge if I do that. I'll get fired if I play defensively, I think.
Agree.
Jennifer and Donnie, any thoughts on how to navigate that political landscape, do that dance?
I'll let Jennifer go first.
Well, when I came to Wilson, I spent a lot of time educating the county commissioners and the city council here on why economic development is not a political sport. And in addition to doing that, I keep my head down. I do my job. I don't play politics. I don't interfere in other organizations' jobs. And when people try to push me into interfering, I completely resist it. So in Wilson, at least to this point, it could change tomorrow, economic development is not a political football.
So I had a couple things. You probably have to edit them out, so I'll save them for another day.
You can say it and I'll edit it out.
I got more stories, and I've had more comebacks than Billy Martin. So I think the hard part for us is we have so many municipalities, is trying to not get sideways with one of them, and there are not equal one of these municipalities. So trying to go back to my point, trying to be relevant to them is sometimes difficult because Cherryville doesn't have the same business development prospects that Gastonia does. And so we're trying to do things in each one that help them out in different ways, but are still meaningful to them. On the political side, I think it's just tough. I think if sideways was one of the most powerful things, just to go visit and do it, or don't call them up, don't send them an email, as tough as it may be, go see them. And I think at some point you have to stand your ground if you really believe that that's what is important to do, and you have good rationale for doing it, that you don't necessarily acquiesce. You stick with what you believe. If they don't want to do it, they don't do it. But I think if you back away too many times, then you start losing your conviction of what's the right thing to do. And I think you have to be, in some cases, tough just to gut it out and go do what you think is the right thing to do. And hopefully you get enough people to believe that that's the right thing for them to do. And I've had a lot of tough situations with elected officials at different times. But I think the one thing that we've always stuck on in Jennifer's case is it really wasn't about me or anything else. It's really about economic development, what we needed to do to be successful, and try to keep the focus on that and stay neutral, stay out of things that don't belong.
One thing too for me is, and I got it from one of the people on the phone here, is with Mark. He was my first boss and a good mentor in this job. It was cost benefit, and always remind them of over the career, what you've done, what you benefit over. You're one of the few profit centers for the county or city.
So I've been asking all of you questions. What just general advice would you give to Steve Yost or anyone in this profession who doesn't want to move often, who wants to finds a place, like you mentioned, Mark finds a place and they really love it and they want to stay? What's some other advice you would give them to be able to stay in a place they really like for a long time? Just anything else you want to throw in the boat?
Crystal, I would say the one thing I haven't said, I guess, in this conversation is the power of a 5-year strategy. And it may not appeal to everybody or think it's a waste of money or time. I can tell you, if you want to be successful in this kind of work, and you want to sustain the success and leadership and connectivity in a community or region, that is, to me, the only way to do it. Because you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses relative to the competition. You got to know where you're going and how to align everybody else with you. And once you do that, you can sustain over time. And as long as you're flexible and willing to adapt and stay consistent with that strategic planning effort, I think that's the key to doing what we all do on this call and doing it well over time.
That's good.
I think you have to be careful, though, not to want it too much. You can't play it safe. You can't, there's no formula for working with companies. So if you try to do the same thing over and over again, you are going to fail. You have to adjust to the circumstances you're in, and you have to be willing to embrace, the challenges. And it's not always easy, and you can face uphill battles, but you have to be able to embrace it. And you also have to be someone who can build consensus in a community to keep support.
I'll wrap up and I'll stop recording in a second. So I'm a huge fan of Adam Grant. If you guys read Adam Grant's work, the organizational psychologist guy who writes and has podcasts, and I'm a huge fan. His latest book is Think Again. It's about leaders who rethink what they thought they knew. And all of you are like that. You don't have a set mindset. And I think that, or a mindset that you're constantly changing. And I think that's something that makes you all stand out from others. You will be doing something and then you'll totally rethink how to do it. That's Jennifer's statement about always trying new things and doing new things and not being set in one particular way to do it. And I've picked up on that from all of you over many years, that you're constantly rethinking things. So if you like Adam Grant, you haven't read his latest book, pick it up, Think Again. It's a lot of what you all do every day, whether you kind of realize it or not, but you're constantly rethinking things. So.